worked very hard day and night to secure this landmark decision. While I too worked day and night in Nigeria to supply him all the facts and the litigation support he required from Nnamdi Kanu because he was not allowed to meet with Kanu during his many visits to Nigeria for this purpose. It was a very tough battle. Bruce is a former Associate Deputy Attorney General of the United States and is a lawyer of international renown. Robinson, you can imagine the incalculable diplomatic consequences of preventing such a man from meeting with his client many times. The treatment meted out to him discouraged the other leading lawyers of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu who are based outside Nigeria, namely the Bindmans and the Lukri, the Bindman of Britain and the Lukri of Kenya, with whom I've been working very closely since July last year. We discouraged them from coming to Nigeria to meet with Kanu, and that too has its own consequences. The second mishandling is three-pronged. It's three ways. It came with this very decision that the Attorney General is now saying stuff that tends to has a tendency of showing that he does not wish to obey this order. He's playing semantic games with the language of the judgment between discharged versus acquitted. Then there is this unbelievable misconception of what is called the pre-rendition and post-rendition offenses. And of course, you have the extrajudicial enabling of Nigeria's National Security Council with the fruits of the judgment. Well, number one, my reaction to this is that number one, whether Nnamdi Kanu was acquitted or not, discharging him is enough to allow him to go home. In our jurisprudence here and in America, Bruce will agree with me, it's not an acquittal alone that allows a detainee to go home. A discharge or even a strikeout can as well allow a detainee to go home. The reason for this is simple and it is constitutional, and that is the government is not allowed to lock you up without a criminal charge standing against you. So as of 6 p.m. on Thursday, when the gavel came down at the Court of Appeal in favor of Nnamdi Kanu, he no longer had any criminal charges standing against him. Therefore, continuing to detain him rather than for a short period of time required to administratively process his release amounts to force and unlawful imprisonment, if not worse. To be sure, Robinson, it is this same attitude, this same executive rascality that had guided the actions which culminated in the extraordinary rendition that will, like that of Umar Odiko, dog the nation of Nigeria in eternity. Now, the notion by the Attorney General that Kanu will not be released because of what the AGF called pre-rendition, this is nonsense. The AGF has forgotten so easily that in his fit of levying quantum terrorism-related offenses against Kanu, he unilaterally, after the rendition, dropped all the pre-rendition offenses or charges, but left only what? The one that dealt with illegal importation of radio equipment. And that one was then eventually dismissed on Thursday. So what that means is that there's no single pre-rendition offense standing against Nnamdi Kanu, none right now. Additionally, the National Security Council has no business discussing whether a court order should be obeyed or not. It makes it look like the Supreme Court of Nigeria, which it is not. Plus, agitation for a separate state or agitation for Biafra is a protected political opinion called self-determination. In both our domestic laws here and under international law. It's not a national security issue that requires guns, bullets, rendition, and imprisonment. Instead, it calls for dialogue, political brinkmanship, accord, and satisfaction. And finally, Robinson, the eighth and the final mishandling, or the final straw, if you like, lies in President Buhari failing to keep to the promise he had twice made to obey any court order that bears on the release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu.
Okay, so I was going to play a video before we go to that very section. I'm sorry, I don't really want to interrupt you, but you will have the chance to give us more information. But let me play this video because it goes perhaps directly to the point you are trying to bring up now.
There is one institution that I wouldn't dare interfere with, that is judiciary. Kanu's case is with the judiciary. But what I wonder is when Kanu was safely in Europe, abusing this administration and mentioning too many things, I never thought really he would voluntarily come and defend himself on the accusation he has. So we are giving him an opportunity to defend himself in our system, not to be abusing us from Europe, as if he was not a Nigerian. Let him come here with us and then criticize us here, and then Nigerians know that I don't interfere with the judiciary. Let him be listened to. But those who are saying that he should be released, no, we cannot release him.
No possibility of a political solution?
No, there is a possibility of political solution. If people behave themselves, all well and good. But you can't go to a foreign country and keep on sending incorrect economic and security problem against your country and thinking that you will never have to account for what you have been doing. Let him account for what he has been doing.
Mr. President, as
Barrister Ejimakor. All right. Actually, I have this question for you, Attorney Fein. As you've seen this video, Buhari, can you hear me, Attorney Fein?
yes, I can. Yes.
All right. The president of Nigeria, President Buhari, had during this interview actually committed himself, actually, tried to address the issue in such a way that it will look like Nigeria is actually judiciary fit. Their judicial system is functioning perfectly, and he don't really have to interfere in the judicial affair. That's the impression he tried to give the public in that context. Now, the Court of Appeal have set Nnamdi Kanu free. They said Nnamdi Kanu is discharged, and the Abubakar Malami has come out to say that he is just discharged but not acquitted. These are details I don't really want to go into now, but what I would like to know from you is, given this very situation, the behavior of the federal government here or the AG, would you say that the president is not keeping his word?
He's not kept his word for a long time. Remember, he said, oh, Nnamdi should come back here and defend himself. Well, among other things, when Nnamdi was defending himself, he had a court order saying that he could visit with 3 persons of his choice twice a week. I went to visit him, have this person of his choice. I was denied 3, 4, 5 times, more than Peter on the cross denying Christ. Nothing ever happened. There was no contempt of court. Buhari ignored the entire court order. His attorney general did. He has no credibility whatsoever. Here's someone who, at the same time, he purports to denounce Boko Haram, releases hundreds, if not thousands, of Boko Haram saying, they've been redeemed, with no evidence that they've been redeemed, and he sends them to the south to massacre Biafrans. So it's clear that President Buhari has no respect for the law whatsoever. This is just further proof of the same. However, I think that means that now the game is up with even the most cynical members of the international community, especially the United States. And the time now is for sanctions. We've had enough of this maneuvering around. And think of this absurdity that Malawi is making. Well, he hasn't been acquitted. Yeah, because he's never had a trial. He's been there for over a year. Every time that there was an opportunity for a real trial, they just kicked the ball down the road. We don't have evidence, so we just want to detain him. They never had charges that were comprehensible anyway. If you actually read the indictment, you'd laugh. They purport to be listening to radio broadcasts during a 3-year period, can't identify the date they heard the broadcast, can't identify the words that were used, and that's supposed to be justification for accusing and convicting somebody of treason. The whole thing is ridiculous. So the fact is, he is dismissed means there are no outstanding charges, as Barrister Ejimakor had explained, and that means you can't detain somebody if you don't have any outstanding charges. If they want to do it right, they can go back again and try to get extradition whenever he would return to the UK or some other country and see whether they can get any kind of compliance on that score. But I think the whole thing is a complete farce here. And there ought to be a continuing focus on the fact that Nigeria is no more a rule of law state than North Korea or China or Russia. It belongs to be expelled from any family of democratic nations, and I believe it deserves to be suspended from the United Nations until it starts to comply. It's actually acting in a way that's contrary to the purposes of the United Nations, one of which is to recognize self-determination by all discrete peoples. And if he wants to keep the Biafrans in Nigeria, he simply has to act in a way that would cause Biafrans to decide they want to vote freely to remain in Nigeria. Of course, that's not what he wants to do. He wants to bring them in and hold them there at the end of machine guns and bombers and things of that sort. So it's a very, very disappointing situation. We need to continue to comply with the rule of law. And now I believe the next step is international sanctions orchestrated by the United States.
Thank you, sir. Your statement is, it gives hope. I have to say, Nnamdi Kanu has always been the one speaking about the capability of the United States to recognize human rights. He strongly believes in the the practice of human rights by United States, the respect to human rights. Most of his broadcasts, he cites a lot of past United States presidents who were more or less concerned on the issue of human rights, just like he does in terms of Britain. He's the kind of person that doesn't even, look if the truth comes from his enemy or his friend, what he understands that truth must be said. So despite the fact that he sometimes talk about what his grievance about British behavior in Nigeria, he still believes that Britain can stand out to say what is correct. But now I want to ask you, now that the Court of Appeal has discharged Nnamdi Kanu and the Nigerian government continues to hold him, would you say it is time for the British government to come in and compel the Nigerian, or at least persuade the Nigerian government to do the needful?
Well, it's a nice idea, but the British really are complicit in this problem. They've been complicit since 1914, if not earlier. They were complicit in supporting the government during the 67-70 Civil War. I do not believe that the UK has sufficient clout, to really have much leverage on Nigeria. It's got its own domestic crises. The prime minister may have a shelf life like a led ahead us in a grocery store. They have huge inflation problems. They got Brexit. They have shown no inclination at all to intercede. In fact, their latest statement was that they would acquiesce in DSS's assertion that Nnamdi Kanu would never, ever see a foreign medical doctor to take care of his very precarious health problems because the Nigerian government wouldn't permit it. Although the president visits, British doctors, every few weeks for his condition, and the British acquiesce with regard to this maltreatment of one of their own citizens. So I believe that the UK is going down a dead road. Despite the fact that Nnamdi is a UK citizen, it's going to be the United States that's going to be the deliverance here, given our devotion more than Britain to human rights, especially Christian, Jewish, religious freedom, which is obviously on the block here. You have forced conversions in the Southeast at present. And that's unfortunate, but Britain is no longer the Britain of Winston Churchill. Liz Truss is no Winston Churchill, and she's no Maggie Thatcher.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I would like to have another question for Matsanga, but I think he's currently out of reach. So let me quickly then have this question for Barrister Ejimakor. Barrister, you previously touched the area of the court in Abia State, the decision made there. Some Biafran believe that you already had cleared the issue of the jumping bail in the courts in Abia State. Could you please explain to our viewers again what actually happened there in Abia State High Court, and whether the court's judgment in Abia State is related to the latest Supreme Court judgment?
Well, all of these things are related. They're all being seen because we are dealing with one man here named Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, and all of these things, legal actions, emanated from his rendition. Apart from the charges standing against him, every legal action that has been taken since June 29, when he suddenly showed up in Nigeria in chains, legal actions are geared to him, to protecting his rights, including the one Bruce is doing from his base in America, the one the Bindemans are doing, the Lucre of Kenya, and the others. I have actions too before the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. And the judgment from the High Court of Abia State is very relevant, because that judgment is a judicial pronouncement against the injustice that was done to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu back in September 2017. It was an injustice of the lethal and deadly kind, in which several people were killed, and he nearly lost his life. And to save himself, he took a flight outside of Nigeria. It is the taking of that flight that prompted and compelled the federal government to go on hot pursuit of him all the way to Kenya, and they laid ambush and eventually renditioned him. So the relationship, the nexus, the connection is all there. They are all connected like Lake Midland Trade. But you see, Robinson, the State High Court in Abia State decided one of two issues that I laid before the court. The first issue pertained to the September 2017 military attack. The court resolved that issue. The second issue was the extraordinary rendition, which the court declined the jurisdiction on the basis that extraordinary rendition is a cousin to extradition, and under the Nigerian Constitution, extradition lies or matters relating to extradition lie within the exclusive jurisdiction of federal high courts. So basically, I took that indirect legal advice and I proceeded to the federal high court in Umuahia, in the same Abia state, and that very aspect of the case, which is the extraordinary rendition, is still lying before the court, and it was heard definitely, finally, on 4th October, and the judgment will be rendered on 27th October. That's in about 10 days. One might ask if, in the wake or subsequent to this judgment by the appeal court in Abuja, which bordered on rendition, the rendition case in Federal High Court in Eastern Nigeria can still proceed to judgment as scheduled for October 27. And the answer is yes, it can proceed because there are nuances there. The Court of Appeal in Abuja decided the impact of extraordinary rendition on the jurisdiction of the Federal High Court to proceed with trial of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. That's not the issue before the court in Umuahia. The issue before the court is to make a determination as to whether the extraordinary rendition of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is a violation of Article 12, Sub 4 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights as domesticated by Nigeria in 1983 as a fundamental right. It's a fundamental right. That's the determination that I have submitted to the court to make. And if that determination comes down in favor of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, some remedies will ensue. Some remedies will naturally follow. And those remedies were not considered by the Court of Appeal last Thursday. Number one remedy is that if your fundamental right is violated in Nigeria, you're entitled to monetary compensation. So I applied for monetary compensation as a matter of law. Two, if Mazi Nnamdi Kanu was extraordinarily renditioned or unlawfully expelled from Kenya, as you can find that expression in the laws of Nigeria, they call it unlawful expulsion in our domestic law here. If the court makes a finding that his right to lawful expulsion was violated, he has the right to be restored to the status quo. In this case, he will be restored, or he shall be restored to either Kenya or Britain. Three, if he was unlawfully expelled, you cannot ground his criminal prosecution on that, because technically speaking, he's still in issue. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Okay, but can you hear me too? Okay, we have him back. Actually, Barrister, my question is we can't hear you, Barrister. Okay, my question was actually if there is a direct relationship. Of course, there is a direct relationship, but between that, what happened in the court of Abia State and what happened there recently in the decision by the verdict of the appeal court. Of course, one would find the relationship because my conviction or conviction of many people is that if the appeal court, the court in Abia State had stated that Nnamdi Kanu has to be, compensated for what happened to him or for the action taken against him by the Nigerian military. That means a direct acknowledgement that he did not jump bail, and that if he had fled for his life, that such movement should not be conceived as jumping bail. And yet, the Attorney General is bringing the issue of jumping bail as an open, as a case that is yet to be solved. So that's why I was asking you if there is relationship between the Abia jurisdiction and that of the appeal court. Barrister, can you hear me? Hear you. Okay. Barrister, can you go off and come back? You will be fine if you go out and come back. I mean, go off and come back. It will be all right. Okay. Barrister, can you go off and come back? Because we can't hear you. Okay. You did that. All right. So, well, let me just play this video before we continue, because it's yet another discussion that we're going to treat here. And the question will be coming to you, Attorney Fein. But before we go to that, let me play this video for you.
The interactive session is an expansive one attended by members of the traditional institutions, religious communities, and sociocultural organizations from the Southeast. President Buhari is warmly received by the Indibo community, and this rare interaction with him at close range is an opportunity for the Southeast community to be frank about issues affecting the region, including the appeal for amnesty for IPOB leader Nnamdi Kanu.
I can only ask you for one thing, Mr. President, as an elder. As I told you on the 18th of November last year, I want to see peace in this country before I join my ancestors. I want to see peace in the Southeast, particularly where there is all sorts of crisis. And there's something that will lead to that peace, that will help us to settle that peace. It's just around the corner. And I ask you, Mr. President, give me the mandate, give me the mandate, give me the person I want. And I'll give you peace. I'll give you peace. I guarantee you that, Mr. President.
Responding to issues raised by his host, President Buhari said the appeal for the release of the IPOB leader is a matter within the purview of the courts. He also condemned killings in the Southeast, saying anyone carrying weapons without due authorization is an enemy of the state.
I have listened carefully to the various appeals from the elders to the traditional leaders regarding a wide range of options. And as I have said previously, this matter remains in the full purview of the courts, where it will be properly educated. Terrorists who unfortunately have...
Okay, so Attorney Fein, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so in this video, President Buhari was asked by an elderly Igbo man asking the president to release Nnamdi Kanu, and the president refused to take this responsibility. On the contrary, he pushed the responsibility to the judiciary. And based on what is playing out now, as we've just concluded, he is, retracting from his promises. But that's not what I want to point out here, because we've discussed that already. But what I want to point out, what is actually striking about this relationship between Buhari and the Igbo politicians is that there seems to be a kind of a behavior of willy-nilly. I mean, a behavior of somehow being at the state of mind of the Igbo politicians. I don't know if they are afraid of coming out to say exactly what they are supposed to say, because if they've asked the president to release Nnamdi Kanu and he says it's going to be decided in the judiciary, and now it's time for that to happen, and he's not doing that, we are yet to see the Ohanese that called him, that invited him in that very congregation you saw. We are yet to see him come out to denounce this behavior of the president. So I don't know how to put this, but I want to ask you. I believe you know the Fulani basic relationship in Nigeria. Actually, it was in 17th century they come to the north and settled there through the conquering of the Hausas by the Usman Dan Fodio. They established themselves as part of Nigeria. Of course, Nigeria weren't formed at the time. But what happened in the 1960 and 1967, there was consistent tribal conflict, between the Igbos and the Northerners. That was a gradual procedure that led to the 1967 to 1970 Biafran-Nigerian War. And after that, it has not ended. There continues to be a serious strife between the Igbo and the Fulani. But today, it's known that some people, it's apparently clear that some people have seen a kind of a meta relationship of the whole thing, like there is a Fulani and the Igbo war going on without the Igbos noticing that. What do you think?
Well, they don't call it a war. It's the same thing. I certainly I sympathize with the Igbos, the Biafrans, who are frightened that if they speak up, they will suffer retribution. Unfortunately, it's not unique in Nigeria. If you went into Moscow Red Square and criticized Putin, it would only be moments before you were imprisoned. If you went to Beijing, Tiananmen Square, and criticized President Xi, you'd be locked up in less than 5 seconds. Nigeria has plunged into that level of tyranny, where in some sense the silence is an earmark of a terrorist state that's willing to kill and brutalize anyone who seeks to redress grievances through proper, peaceful political means. And that's exactly why self-determination is imperative. It's clear from experience. Biafrans either have their own nation or they're in a suicide pact. The Fulani simply will not surrender any of their power and the money that they extract from the oil and minerals, largely in the southeast where the Igbo reside, the Biafrans reside. And they are willing to lower themselves to the worst form of brutality to continue to plunder the Biafrans. Let's just look at what reality is. And it's not different from these other authoritarian, tyrannical states. It's simply that because the international community does not focus as much on Nigeria, they don't have as much of a bright light on the genocide and crimes against humanity in Biafra as they do in Kiev in Ukraine, against the Uyghurs and the Tibetans in China. But certainly the misery and the brutalities and atrocities are every bit as bad. And I think it's absolutely right that despite the fear that weakness and silence emboldens terrorists and bullies to be even worse. I think, if anything, Nnamdi Kanu's courage, really unbelievable bravery and willingness to call a spade, to fight the threat on his life, should be an inspiration to all Biafrans, myself, to make clear that it's unfortunate, life can be unfair, but if you don't stay up and stand up, these people will totally steamroll you. You'll have no life other than living in a crouch, and that's not acceptable.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. I think that would be the last question for tonight because we lost Attorney Barrister Ejimakor, and also Dr. Matsanga is not connecting. I think he has a problem with his gadget. I don't know, his device. So, and I have my last question for you. I thank you very much, Attorney Fein, for being around. And yeah, thank you, viewers who have made their time to come around this evening to listen to this discussion. We are Mirror African Diaspora TV, Germany. We are broadcasting live today on YouTube and Facebook. So follow us on YouTube and Facebook, and I hope you enjoyed today's discussion. I hope some of your doubts were cleared, some of the ideas, some of the things you don't understand very well concerning this very heated discussion. You have the opportunity for today to get information that will help you understand how this very whole thing is unfolding. Wonderful people from across the globe. Thank you very much once again. And Attorney Fein, thank you for coming.
Thank you and Friday. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.